got sworn in on a Monday, raised my right hand, took my oath, filled out my paperwork. 4 days later, I was taken hostage and shot. A very difficult way to start your career. That hole right there is where the bullet went in my back.
That's the real shirt that you've kept. That's what's crazy about it. What got you to decide to become an ATF agent?
Dealing with drug kingpins and going to mansions and negotiating for tons of cocaine and stripper models, bringing them martinis. And I was like, man, you know what? I can do that. I can do that. Hollywood's version of undercover work is a hoax. I still loved it, man. I loved every day of it.
You're in Hell's Angels. Their purpose is narcotics, killing, crime, money, women, anything to break the law.
The mission was to uncover violent crime.
Did you ever feel like those guys got so close to you where you started liking them and then you felt like you betrayed them? Did you ever feel like that or not at all?
I felt like that all the time. The good people are not always all that good, and the bad people oftentimes are not always all that bad.
Craziest shit you've seen ever on work.
We're working a cartel case. One of the people we're dealing with got sealed up in a 55-gallon steel drum and left out in the desert. This human being had become like soup in that barrel.
How do you keep yourself calm?
I felt like I could get through anything. Now, I was bulletproof. What you say or what you did or how you acted or responded could be the factor on whether you lived or died.
My guest today is Jay Dobbins. He's a New York Times bestseller, 27-year federal agent, retired federal agent as an ATF. Again, alcohol, tobacco, firearms. I don't know why they still have the alcohol and tobacco. Obviously, they did back in the days in 72. But he's got one of the most unique stories, a very, very unique story of what he did. Going undercover, I think, on 500 different cases, and one big one being the one that he did with the Hell's Angels, which for 55 years, nobody could infiltrate until Jay Dobbins showed up, and then he was able to infiltrate in 2 years. So, Jay, thank you so much for being a guest on Valuetainment.
Thank you for having me, and welcome to your audience.
Yeah, so, you know, for me, a fun fact is one of my very, very good friends was a Mongol. And he was a Mongol who decided to change his life. And he was at a La Crescenta Valley. And he had a crazy life in the past, all the tattoos, the stories to go with it, biker, everything. But he had become a peacemaker. He was kind of trying to get guys to leave the life rather than, but still the Mongols liked him. They were still good with him. And we traveled together for a good 5-6 years. And he would always tell me stories about the Mongols and the fights, the battles between the two. So I always had to hear stories from this guy when he was a Mongol out of Crescenta Valley. But what got you to decide to become an ATF agent? You were an athlete before. How do you go from that to being an ATF agent?
You become an ATF agent from an athletic background by being a failed athlete. To be quite honest with you, I never had a plan B. I was going to play professional football. And everything that I did focused around that. When the time came, I wasn't good enough. I don't have excuses. There's a lot of athletes out there that like, oh, if I only wouldn't have hurt my knee or I hurt my back or the coach didn't like me. I have zero excuses. I did every single thing within my power to play professional football. I just wasn't good enough. And so I have a clear conscience about that.
Very interesting. Most people, that's a very interesting perspective you just gave, because, you know, you have friends who say, if it wasn't for this knee injury, if it wasn't for this back injury, if it wasn't for this ankle, I may have made it there. You're just saying you didn't make it there. But the one story I like that you said, when you had a running, where was it at when you experienced training with Andre Reed and Jerry Rice?
Well, that was in the process. I was still on my original plan A. And I went to the 1985 NFL Combine, which is, for lack of better terms, or for your audience out there that's not football fans, it's the NFL's meat market. It is where prospective players come in and you're weighed and measured and tested in the presence of coaches and general managers and owners, and they decide whether you are worthy of being a part of their organization. So I was an all Pac-10 football player in college. I had a very good college football career. So I went to the combine thinking, this is my chance. I'm going to show off. right? So I get paired up with a couple guys I'd never heard of before. One dude was from Kutztown State. I hadn't even heard of it. I asked him, where's it at? You know, we shake hands. Hey, my school's in Pennsylvania, and I'm shaking hands with them, and my internal dialogue is that I'm going to whip your ass today, right? Another dude's from this little school in Mississippi that I never heard of. Well, we start working out, and my ego and my self-confidence was very high. And in 10 minutes, I realized I was not going to be a professional football player. Because these kids that were my size, my build, I'd never heard of before, I couldn't keep up with them. Wow. They were everything about them as football players was better than me. Well, the kid from Kutztown State was Andre Reed, who played 15 years in the league and is in the Hall of Fame. And the guy from the little school in Mississippi went to Mississippi Valley State. It was Jerry Rice, arguably the greatest football player to ever wear a helmet and shoulder pads. So I was not judging myself against the fairest competition, but nonetheless, those guys were absolute freak show athletes. And I was a common man.
And let me tell you, I was a Bills fan when I came to the States. Most people don't know. I was a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. BB, Kelly, Bryce Pop, Bruce Smith, you know, all those players. I mean, obviously, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas. They just had a stacked squad those 4 years. And to be able to say that you watched Andre Reed in 1985 and Jerry Rice, at that point, did you kind of tell yourself, these guys are going to kill it in the NFL? Were you seeing the major separation of talent between them and others?
It was obvious. Like, no one knew who they were yet. I mean, they had good college careers, great college careers, actually, but they were not on a national stage yet. Kutztown State and Mississippi Valley State had not put them on a national stage. Who they were going to become was still yet to be seen. But even as one of their peers, working out with them, you could look at these guys and say, like, man, they're different, man. These cats are different.
That's it. That's the part right there. That's the part right there when you tell the difference between talent and you get to levels. I asked Kobe one time, Kobe, who did you face off where you kind of knew, like, this guy's at a different league? Because he was ranked the 56th best player in high school, and he was coming up, and he was sizing everybody up. And he's like, man, some of the guys you faced off, you knew they were superior, and you knew they were going to do something. And then obviously Kobe ends up becoming the late Kobe Bryant. God bless his soul. He ends up becoming who he is today. So you're an athlete. You're playing football. Plan A, I'm going to go in the NFL. I'm going to be a star. That's going to be my career, and I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do later. Maybe be a coach, maybe stay in the game. I don't know what it'll be, but I love football. At what point do you say, I'm going to go be an ATF agent?
I wasn't drafted in the NFL. I went and played a partial season in the Canadian Football League. I played a partial season in the United States Football League.
When you played Canadian Football League, was Flutie playing at that time, or who were the stars in CFL?
Well, I played with the Ottawa Rough Riders, and probably the biggest name on our team, like, actually didn't make his big name as an athlete. Our quarterback was a guy named J.C. Watts, who ultimately became a congressman from Oklahoma.
J.C. Watts?
J.C. Watts was the quarterback when I was in
I know J.C. Watts.
He's a truly amazing man. He's a man that's very important in society right now.
100%.
As a black man, as an athlete, as a politician, he's got an important voice.
So you're playing for CFL. J.C. Watts is your quarterback, and then you tried a couple other things there, and then what did the transition come to ATF?
Well, you know, I get cut in the CFL. I wasn't good enough to stick there. I played a partial season in the USFL when that league folded. I actually had a tryout with the Chicago Bears, and I went to a camp with the Bears, and the coach was Mike Ditka at the time. And Coach Ditka, when he was letting me go, when he was releasing me, kind of put his arm over my shoulder out in the field, and he said, kid, he goes, I love your attitude, but you're 20 years too late for this league. 20
years. How old were you at that time?
I was 24, you know. But
so meaning in 1995, you would have been a star.
Yeah, my style of play just did not, the athleticism had grown, and it was, you know, I say this all the time. If you take the worst NFL team out there. I don't care who you decide that is. And then you go to their practice squad, which are the guys that are not on their active roster, and find the worst player on the practice squad of the worst NFL team. That kid is an amazing football player. That kid is a freak show football player. That's how hard it is to survive and stick in the game at that level.
That's perspective. That's definitely perspective when you put it that way, to think about that. So, by the way, we've had Mike Ditka on before. I think I was with him at his restaurant in Chicago. We met up. We spent a few hours together, myself, himself, and his wife, and his interviews on Valuetainment. One of my favorite guys. You know, this is a guy that changed the game as a tight end, and then changes the game as an assistant, and then changes the game as a coach, and he had one of the best. I don't know if you watched it, 34-30, with him and the whole story of the Bears. I think it's 84, 85 Bears documentary. One of the best documentaries I've watched. I rented out the entire hotel in New York. I don't remember what the hotel was called, Ohika Castle in New York. We had 32 rooms. I brought everybody and all the executives, and we sat there and we watched the 34-30 because there are so many great lessons in that documentary with Mike Ditka. So now football doesn't work out. You leave football. Where does ATF come in?
Well, I was a young man and I was lost. I never had a plan B. I was like, whatever it is I was doing, I was very good at being focused on it and diligent and committed to whatever that was. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have a plan A. I knew as much of what I didn't want to do as what I did want to do. I never chased. Money was never very important to me or my family. I grew up in a blue-collar family. My dad was a carpenter. My dad pounded nails for a living. My mom was a house cleaner. My mom scrubbed people's toilets for a living that didn't want to scrub their own toilets, right? So we never had a lot, but we always had enough. I knew that I wasn't interested in chasing money. I wanted something so that when my alarm clock went off in the morning and I put my feet on the ground, I felt good. I felt excited about whatever it is I was going to go do. And I wanted to serve. I wanted to serve others. And so it's almost hokey to tell this story, how it came about. But at the time, this is mid-'80s, the television show, Miami Vice, was very popular. Not the movie, not what like the younger generation is, not Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx.
Don Johnson is who you were talking about.
The old TV show, right? And I saw Sonny Crockett like rolling around South Beach in a Lamborghini with a Hugo Boss suit on and dealing with drug kingpins and going to mansions and negotiating for tons of cocaine and stripper models bringing them martinis. And I was like, man, you know what? I can do that. And it grabbed me. It grabbed, like Hollywood grabbed me. What I didn't realize at the time is that Hollywood's version of undercover work is a hoax. It's counterfeit, right? Once I was in it, I realized that Hugo Boss suit that Sonny Crockett wore was a pair of cut-off camos and a wife-beater T-shirt and flip-flops. That Lamborghini was an old beater car. The mansions were trailer parks, and I was rolling up to single wides that were on tilt with aluminum awnings hanging off of them, and rusted swing sets and cars on blocks. And the kingpin in the TV show was some guy sitting at a corner bar with his plumber's crack hanging out who didn't have two nickels to rub together. The big, massive dope loads that we saw on television, it was an 8-ball of coke that was so stepped on with baby laxative, you'd shit before you get high off of it. Wow. To be quite honest with you, the supermodels that were smoking and joking with Sonny and sitting on his lap, they were like straight skanks with 3 teeth in their head and tits like sweat socks with toes in them, with rocks in the toes. It was anything other than what Hollywood had led me to believe it was. And when I saw the reality of it and realized that the entertainment industry had lied to me, I still loved it, man. I loved every day of it. I loved every day of it.
Wow, the fact that you still loved every day of it, that says a lot about the world. Because, you know, Gary Nessner, he's the FBI negotiator from, David Koresh, with what happened in 1993 at Waco. He got recruited based on watching the Mickey Mouse Club, and he saw J. Edgar Hoover on the show. And he said that's how he decided to become an FBI agent, because that inspired him. By the way, this is twice now in 1 week that says these recruiting stories of how brilliant it is to use a TV show, 2 TV shows, to recruit people to the world. Brilliant marketing, if you really...
Well, you know, look at just in a different world. Look at what, back in the day, what, 25 years ago, look what Top Gun did for the military.
Yep.
Look what Top Gun did for naval aviation, for military aviators. Man, it was like the entertainment business and Hollywood is super powerful.
Yes, very true. By the way, I don't know if you know what Hitler did. Hitler did the first Titanic. If you knew the story of the first Titanic, he made the first Titanic, and the director was one of his guys. And the story was making the Nazis a soldier the hero. So people around the world have started saying, "Oh my gosh, what great people these guys are." So you can also use movies to push a lot of propagandas if you wanted to. That's used a lot. I mean, you know this, you're in the world. So now you go and want to become an ATF agent. You see the Miami Vice, you know, you're kind of wanting to have that Don Johnson type of life, you know, going out there having a good time. Career starts. How was your first week as an agent?
Oh my goodness. I got sworn in on a Monday, raised my right hand, took my oath, filled out my paperwork. 4 days later, I was taken hostage and shot. I was shot in the back during an arrest situation. The bullet went in my back, in between my shoulder blade and my spine. It passed through my lung. It narrowly missed my heart, and it exited my chest. So 4 days on the job, and I was laying in the dirt and garbage and dog shit of this trailer park with blood coming out of my chest like you're holding your thumb over the end of a garden hose. And I remember
4 days into it?
4 days. I got hired on a Monday and I got taken hostage and shot on a Thursday. I remember laying there and a pool of blood was growing around me, and an old worn out potato chip bag, like in the breeze, blew through and stuck in the blood and then blew past me. And I was like, oh my God, I am going to die after 4 days on this job in a trailer park. I'm bleeding to death. You know, like 4 days on the job, I hadn't gotten a paycheck yet. That was like, that I comped on that one. That was a free test drive. And actually, like knowing that question was coming, have this ready for you. So this shirt, this is the shirt I was wearing the day I was shot. That hole right there is where the bullet went in my back. And this hole right here is where it came out of my chest. So, you know,
freaking believable.
Like a very obviously a very difficult way to start your career.
Now let me ask you, what I read somewhere is the fact that you had the option to get retirement disability for the rest of your life, and you still turned it down.
Well, yeah, like it goes back to what we said earlier. Like, you know, I'm from a blue collar family. We like, my folks never chased money. I never chased money. I had attorneys lining up at the hospital, come in and say, "Hey kid, you know what $1 million looks like? You want $1 million? How about $5 million? You'll never have to work another day in your life. Let me take this case." The government has put you in a situation where they've created a huge amount of liability for themselves. You were not yet prepared for this. You weren't trained for this.
Got it.
They want you and your story to go away. You tell me how much money you want, and I'll get them to put as many zeros on that check as you ask for, and it'll never see a courtroom. And my response was just to get out. I did not take the job for the money. What I wanted, truly wanted, was a chance. I wanted to get healthy and a chance to come back and see if I could do it right. See if I could do it without messing up.
Now, Jay, let me ask you, in that moment, did your mom or dad talk to you? Were you like, Dad, should I take the money? This is what they're telling me? Or was it just you made the decision, no, I want to get back to my job?
It was my decision. My parents were around me at the time. I think now, 30-something years after that event, man, should I have taken $1 million or the $5 million fund? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, everything in between, like declining that money and today, I wouldn't change a dang thing. I wouldn't change one thing. So it was the right decision.
And so you said 30-something, how many years ago was it the day you got shot with that shirt?
I was shot on November 19th of 1987.
November 19, 1987. Wow. And you kept the shirt from that day?
33 years ago, something like that.
Have you ever washed that shirt or no?
I haven't. I use it it's just a prop. It's just a prop I use when I'm training or telling my story.
But it's the real shirt.
Oh yeah, that's it.
That's the real shirt that you've kept. That's what's crazy about it.
The detectives, so the detectives in the case, when I got to the emergency room, the medical staff cut the shirt off me. And so the detectives gave it back to me, but it was all shredded up. And my mother-in-law sewed it all back together for me to make it a shirt again.
Oh, so you were married at that time? You were already married?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know you married, 2 kids. I read that with the family that you were. Okay, so now that happens. You come back, you recover, you say, no, I want more. I want more of this. So from there on, you go become the ATF agent, and you were on 500 different cases. Is that pretty accurate?
I was an active participant in over 500 undercover operations. Sometimes on the point as the operative, sometimes as a team leader, sometimes as a cover agent, but I was directly involved. I had fingerprints on over 500 undercover operations.
And out of those 500 operations that you were working on, outside of the one with the Hells Angels, which we'll get to here in a minute, which one was, a couple of them you can say where this was absolutely crazy that I faced off over here. Here's what I worked on with this. I heard something about, you did something with the Rodney King trial, the Rodney King riots. There was a lot of different things you worked on, but can you share a couple of the stories with us?
Sure. The Hells Angels case, which gets all the notoriety and attention, is not my favorite investigation or my favorite case. I'm not even sure it's in the top 5 or top 10, to be quite honest with you. You mentioned Waco. I responded after the fact to the events at Waco. I responded after the fact to the Columbine High School shooting. I responded to the Rodney King riots. So I touched some historical events, nationally historical events during my career. But the reality of it is like, as an undercover operative, I bought everything from street corner dope up to cartel dope. I bought Saturday night special pea shooters in the park up to shoulder launched like anti-aircraft rockets. Everything from homemade PVC pipe bombs that some tweaker was making in his garage or his mom's basement up to servo-activated remote controlled C4 devices. I worked on home invasion infiltrations and murder for hire cases and gang infiltrations. Me and my partner infiltrated an element of Timothy McVeigh's, the remnants of Timothy McVeigh's crew that was operating in southern Nevada after McVeigh set off his bomb at the Oklahoma City, at the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, that were planning Oklahoma City Part 2. They had intended to blow up 3 Las Vegas casinos, the Mirage, the Treasure Island, and the Golden Nugget. Me and my partner infiltrated that scheme and diffused that plan. On another case, an undercover partner of mine infiltrated an element of the Aryan Brotherhood, and over the course of 100 days, bought 100 improvised explosive devices that members of the Aryan Brotherhood were building for us, so that we could use, to do murders and assassinations and intimidations. When I look at those two cases in the context of the Hells Angels case, I think they're more important because I think they had a significantly more important safety element to them. If these guys that were going to blow up these casinos in Las Vegas were able to carry through that plan, it's easy to imagine, thousands of people being injured and killed. This Aryan Brotherhood case where we were buying all these IEDs, they were selling those devices to us with the intention that we were using them to murder and maim people. Those are important investigations that didn't get a lot of attention, that didn't get a lot of publicity, that without a crystal ball to say what would have happened, but it's not hard to speculate that they saved lives and saved people from significant injuries.
How do you become an undercover and keep the lack of hate and distaste for them, and be able to make them believe that you're one of them, and still be able to, catch them committing a crime? How do you manage those two personalities?
I think you have to be a sociopath.
I would have to agree, because when I talked to Joe Pistone, Donnie Barasco, Joe Pistone, who was undercover for the whole the mob families, the 5 families that he brought down, 6 years for him to be undercover. I mean, that's a long time. He was married during that time to be able to do it. And I asked him a question. I said, how do you not flip? Like, people can act, and even in Hollywood, you do a scene that's 30 seconds. You do a monologue, maybe like what Edward Norton did in American History X, it's 8 minutes. That's sick when somebody does that, right? But you're talking about acting for a month, 2 months, 2 years with your case with, how do you do that? How do you manage the two personalities of who you are and who you're acting to be?
The honest answer to that is not a flattering answer. It's not a hero answer. There's elements to this answer that I am ashamed of. I'm regretful of. I carry the guilt for. I wasn't very good at separating my undercover persona from who I was.
God.
I had played that role for so long and so aggressively that now, in hindsight, regretfully, my job evolved from what I did to who I was. And I became addicted to lying. I became addicted to the scam, to the hustle. And every time I was successful at it, my ego grew. And so, I'll tell you a little story. I think that's a good demonstration of it. I had spent routinely months and weeks away from home. And I came home one time and my wife told me, "You cannot be gone for months and walk in the door here and talk to me and your kids like we're your suspects out on the street." In my self-defense, I told her, "I am not a light switch. I cannot turn this off and on. People who do what I do for a living and treat it as a hobby or dabble in it or treat it as a gimmick end up dead. I'm not a light switch." And then her response to that was, "I understand you're not a light switch. I understand you have to be on all the time. But when you come to this house, you better install a dimmer switch and take that attitude down a notch. And if you can't, don't come back."
Wow. She told you that.
And I had it coming. I had it at the time. It pissed me off. At the time, I was very resistant to it because I was so in that role. Now, stepping back from it, probably my biggest regret, my shame, my guilt from all this is the amount of battle damage that I put on my family trying to take care of other people's problems. You know, in reality, in hindsight, the people that loved me the most, the people that cared about me the most, my biggest fans, my biggest supporters, were the people that I treated the shittiest. And that is, that's a burden that I just have to carry.
That's I can only imagine. By the way, are you still married? Are you guys still together, married?
I am, you know, by the grace of God. My wife and my kids are so much better than I ever deserved.
You're still married to the same woman as you were married to when you got into the game.
30 plus years now we've been married. You know, our kids are grown, and you know, I'll tell you, I've given my wife a million reasons to throw everything that belongs to me at this house out on the front lawn and say, get out. And she has given me 1,000,001 second chances.
I mean, that's an angel right there. Whoever you married, if she's watching this, man, I salute you. Much respect for that, you know, to be able to go through that. You know, when I'm asking the question for you, and I'm saying, you know, flipping and going which side, Heath Ledger is getting ready to do Joker. He's going to play the role of Joker, right? And he goes and asks Jack Nicholson, who played one of the Jokers in the past. And he says, hey, I'm thinking about playing Joker. I'm getting the offer. What do you think? And Jack Nicholson told him, don't do it. That is the one role I highly recommend you not doing it, because psychologically it messed with my head. And you got to realize Jack Nicholson's done, what's the one he did, Cuckoo's Nest, the old movie, you know, playing a little bit off and nursing a grown man, nursing a woman, you know, that scene. And he says, don't do Joker. And this is coming probably one of the craziest actors of all time. And Heath Ledger goes and does it. And probably, by the way, I even have a statue of him over here. I mean, this guy goes and does the Joker, and he crushes it. And then he comes out, and we know what happens with Heath Ledger, right? And there's a scene where I think it's TMZ goes to the restaurant that Jack Nicholson's about to go into. Camera guy stands outside saying, hey, Jack, did you hear about what happened with Heath Ledger? He said, what happened? He said, they found him dead. He says, what? He says, they found him dead. He says, I told him don't play Joker. There's a scene. It's a very interesting scene when you look at this. How dark of a place did you go? If you were to say to the darkest of darkest places you went to, playing these 500 different events, you know, people you're around, the types of people you're around. If you were to say, Pat, I went to the darkest place, these three places were the darkest place it was. If you could do your best to paint a picture to us, what did that look like?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I have found from my experience that there's two types of undercover operatives. There are operatives that like have a costume that fits the role that they play. And they come to work and they put that costume on, and then they inherit that personality and they become that person, whatever that gear or gimmick is. I was never good at that. I was just like, what you see is what you get. I talk to people on the street the same way I'm talking to you. I interact with people. I was not good at faking being someone, or at least having a personality other than my personality. But I will say this, when we look at the world of good guys and bad guys and good versus evil and whose side are you on, I found that oftentimes the good people are not always all that good, and the bad people oftentimes are not always all that bad. And so, man, I have so many like character flaws and personality traits that are unflattering and things that I don't like about myself. And some of those I actually learned to put into play and to highlight for my undercover role. I have the dark side to me. I try to project positivity. I try to encourage people and promote people. But when I'm put in the right situation or when I'm cornered, like I can be the nicest, best guy in the world. I can also be the dirtiest, nastiest motherfucker out there. And being able to be those two people, I'm not sure that that's healthy or normal. But I played on that. I knew that about me, and so I used it to my advantage. I tried to treat people good. I tried to communicate with people in a proper way. But man, when you turned on me, or when you got sideways with me or my partners, or you put us in danger or whatever, oh man, I was the baddest cat on the planet.
Give me one example.
Oh my goodness, there's so many to pick from. There was a point during the Hells Angels case where some of the suspects had gotten some legitimate information, and our cover was compromised. Our cover was, it was in risk. It was like the truth was coming out, and the lie was starting to crumble. And I was confronted by some Hells Angels on that exact thing, on that exact information. Like, this is what we're hearing. And I got so nasty and spun it back on them and turned it around on them that they were full of shit, that they weren't hearing fucking accurate information. They knew me. I had proven myself time and time again over years and years, and cited events and cited situations, and got really frustrated and angry about it, to the point that these people came into this meeting accusing me and in a position of power, and I flipped that entire situation on them to the point when we left, they were apologizing.
You're July 24th? Is that what you are? Are you July 24th?
I'm a Leo, yeah.
Interesting. Now, let me ask you, if I was in high school with you, were you a tough guy? Were you somebody I didn't want to screw with? Were those two characters still there if I was in 10th grade with you?
No, like I didn't, and I don't carry myself like a tough guy. Like, I don't walk down the street like looking for someone to punch in the head.
But let's just say if we're buddies, if you and I are boys, and I'm your running mate, like we party together, we go to high school parties, we go with the girls, we play football. Let's just say you're the star, I'm the blocker, I'm the tight end. We're really, really tight, okay? Somebody says something to me and disrespects me. Were you ready to brawl or no? Were you more like trying to diffuse?
Yeah, you know what? I didn't and do not try to carry myself as a tough guy, but like don't put me in a corner, man, and don't box me in. I will walk away from a problem if I have opportunity. Yeah. I will run away from a problem if I have an opportunity. But if you put me in the corner, like, we're gonna get it on, and like, you might hurt me, you might hit me, but we're all going to the hospital. That's just.
And you were always like that. You were always like that, even as a kid.
You know, my dad, who was a huge influence in my life as a young man, told me, you know what the nastiest, worst, most vile thing someone can say about you is? What's the most disgusting name you can be called? And as a child, I'm running through like swear words, vulgar names, right? He said, let me tell you what the nastiest thing anybody can ever say about you. S-O-F-T, soft. Never let anybody say you're soft.
I wrote this thinking maybe your dad said coward, but soft. I like that. Your dad said never let anybody say you're soft. Wow. That's pretty big. How old were you when he told you that? Was it?
I was probably, 7, 8 years old.
Now, you said your dad was a carpenter?
My dad was a carpenter, and he was he kind of lived that same life. He was a very peaceful guy. He was a sweet man, but man, that dude was tough. He was tough, and he was not someone that anybody wanted to tangle with.
Jay, craziest thing you've seen, craziest shit you've seen ever on work. Craziest thing you've seen, right? Like witnessed right in front of you, not read about, but you witnessed.
One of the most disturbing things for me, I do not like dead bodies, man. It's not my thing, right? I would not be a good homicide detective because I do not like dead bodies. We're working a cartel case with some pretty high-level narcotics trafficking, and one of the people we're dealing with got sealed up in a 55-gallon steel drum and left out in the desert. And when they recovered that barrel and popped the top of it off, this human being had become like stew, like soup in that barrel. And I was, that was like the sight of that, the smell of that, the thought of someone being sealed alive in a steel barrel and left in the desert, and the misery with the suffocation and all the things that I imagined went into that person's death. I was like, man, I don't care what you're doing, or I don't care who you are, man. Nobody's got that coming.
That's not a way to go. Sammy the Bull said, if I had one way to go, I'd want to get shot in the head. Is that what he said? He said, I'd like to get shot in the head. That's the way to go, because you don't feel anything.
Lights out.
You do not want to go that way. What a way to go. What a way to go. So, okay. So now, the other part I always wonder is, yesterday I was doing a call with some of my leaders, and these are sales guys. And in the world of sales, there's prospecting. In the world of prospecting, there's getting rejected. If you see, when I was coming up, there was a buddy of mine that was the best looking guy in the world, but out of all our friends, but the guy was afraid of getting rejected by girls. And he was nervous. What if she says no? What if this? What if that? And he looked like chiseled. He had the perfect jaw. Those guys that he just had the look. And some of us weren't afraid of that. And some of us got more play than he did, but he was the best looking of the bunch. When it comes down to prospecting, a lot of people are afraid of talking to somebody that's a non-client or a girl because of anxiety. It creates this level of anxiety, right? Okay. So most people today, there are so many books being written about anxiety, panic attacks, all this other stuff. How do you control your anxiety and your panic when you're wired? If they take your jacket off or your shirt off, you may be wiretapped. You may have stuff that they're going to see. It can turn bad. You can get killed. Your life's on the line. You're thinking about your wife and 2 kids. You're thinking about the story's over with. How do you stay poised? Because there's many ways for people to tell if you're nervous, if you're lying. There's many different ways. How do you keep yourself calm?
Well, the fear of failure is a huge motivator. And how do we react to that? How do we handle that? You talked about your friendship with Kobe. And there's thousands of stories about Kobe speaking on the motivating element of the fear of failure. We saw it over and over in the Last Dance documentary with Jordan, how he actually invented things to be fearful of to motivate him. I have a formula, right? And I think this formula applies to me. I think it applies to you. I believe it applies to sports teams, businesses, families. It is the key for all of us to success. How do we overcome that anxiety? We're nervous about something. We have an objective. You're trying to close a deal. You're trying to accomplish something that's super important to you. Establish the purpose. Be clear on what your purpose is. Be clear on what your objective is. Have open and honest dialogue. Have transparent dialogue with the people around you. Because when you are open and honest, and when you speak transparently with people, you build trust. You build two-way trust. The people that you're speaking to, the people that you've surrounded yourself with, hopefully, because you're being open and honest, will develop a trust in you. And then that open communication, you will build trust in them. So you get this two-way trust. So now you've got your purpose established. You've got open and honest communication, and you've built trust. When you have those three things together, you can go solve problems. And that is what any high achiever in the world does. And it doesn't matter if you're flying the space shuttle or if you're pushing a broom as a janitor. It doesn't matter if you're in sales or whatever it is that you're doing. If you're in law enforcement, if you're on a sports team, the people that are great and the units that are great solve problems. Think about it. Just think about you, on a daily basis, the number of problems and conflicts that you have to resolve, people who are great at it, ultimately are our highest achievers. So how do we solve problems? Through having a purpose, having open communication with the people around us, and building trust. Together, when we have that together, that's how we landed on the moon. That's how any great thing in the world has ever been accomplished. Establishing a purpose, having open communication with the people around us, building trust, and then together going to solve that problem. That was my professional life in law enforcement in a nutshell. None of us ever accomplish anything alone. None of us ever get great achievements all by ourselves. There's always people around us that help us and encourage us and give us new ideas and better ideas.
Yeah, but in those moments, like when I think about you, and I think about when you're in that moment and you're getting a call and saying, "Hey, Jay, get all your guns and come meet us at this place." Why? Are we going to go kill somebody? Don't ask questions. Just show up. This is the first year when you're a prospect and you're kind of going through it, right? And like, shit, what do we do? And your partner at the time was who? Pops, right? So you and him, he's also another ATF agent. Both of you guys are undercover. You're getting a call like that. I understand you're saying purpose. I understand you're saying open dialogue and communication. I understand building trust. But you're in Hell's Angels, their purpose is narcotics, killing, crime, money, women, anything to break the law. You know, open dialogue communication, what open communication? And then what trust do you have with them? How are you maintaining your anxiety in those heated moments when it all of a sudden comes up? Because there's a big difference even with that when you get a call and saying, grab your guns and come by. Okay, you can call the ATF and talk to them and say, guys, I just got this call. What the hell do I do? And then they can coach you through it. Well, you know, Jay, here's what I suggest you do. You and Pops jump on a quick conference call together and you're getting a briefing. Fine. But what if you're in the moment and you're on the bike and you're going and they said, this bastard said this, we got to go and do this. And Jay, you know, here's some cocaine and here, let's do this. And you're taking 20 hydroxycuts a day and 6 Red Bulls a day and you're trying to hold it together. How are you staying calm in that moment?
I think that when we look at anything from the outside, without familiarity with it, like things appear to us to be overwhelming. So, like for me, I look at like some guy who can fly the space shuttle. I'm like, how does he process all that? Some guy that's going to operate on somebody's brain. How do you have the confidence to take a knife and open up somebody's head and get in there and move things around? But they're great at what they do, and what they do becomes routine through training, repetition, experience, exercise, all those things, right? And so when you look at them and they're saying like, man, I could never do that. People look at what I did and say, I could never do that. I'm like, you know what? Yes, you could. If you had the experience and the training, and all these things that I had built up over years, those things create confidence. And with confidence comes comfort. So you're asking like, how did I contain this anxiety from these situations that were spinning out of control, that were in some cases life and death situations? And what you say or what you did or how you acted or responded could be the factor on whether you lived or died, right? I had become so comfortable in my role and so confident in my role that, man, like I felt like I could get through anything, man. I was bulletproof. I had a bullet go through my chest. 15 years before that, I was bulletproof. I had been through all these situations before. Like I had brainwashed myself into believing that I was the baddest cat on the streets, that I was the smartest cat on the streets.
Got it.
And so the question is, in this comfort-confidence equation, what comes first, what comes second? Are we naturally confident and then that allows us to operate comfortably? Or do in the undercover world, do we build a persona for ourselves that we're comfortable with, and then it allows us to project confidence? I've never been able to figure out which one comes first or second, but I know this, that the people I was dealing with, the more time I spent with them, I would start to build trust. Then I would build loyalty. I would build their belief. There was a point in time where some of the most violent, intimidating men on the planet, I have no doubt in my mind, would have stepped in front of a bullet for Jaybird Davis.
Wow.
Because I had taken that loyalty and that trust and that confidence and given them comfort, and it had evolved into love in some cases. Now, those same people, when they found out that Jaybird Davis, the gun-running, debt-collecting hitman, was actually a federal agent named Dobbins, those same people were looking to put a baseball bat on the back of my head or drag a straight razor across my throat. So it can change quickly, especially in that world.
Yeah, a couple things. By the way, did you ever feel like those guys got so close to you where you started liking them and then you felt like you betrayed them? Did you ever feel like that or not at all?
I felt like that all the time throughout the course of my career. I would extend pieces of myself to these people and I would let them into my world. And I spent time with people who were sometimes involved in some very vicious, wicked, vile activities. And you see that element of them, and it's so disappointing in humanity, right? But then when you spend extended amount of time with people, like in an undercover environment, you also see other elements of their life, and you see redeeming qualities of their character. So that when you see them do something wicked, it's like, man, you're so much better than this. You know, I'll give you an example. I befriended a couple guys in the Hells Angels, hung out with them, enjoyed spending time with them. They were smart. They were handsome. They had professional careers. One was a stockbroker. One was involved in the investment world or in the financial world. These are smart guys, man. These are not like the stereotypical guys, right? Yeah. Rode motorcycles with them, went to parties with them, drank with them, shot pool with them. They stayed at my house. I stayed at their house. I saw them around kids. I saw them around women, other people, and actually developed an affection for these guys. Like, I kind of like these guys, right? One night, they took a woman at the Mesa Clubhouse, a woman named Cynthia Garcia, a mother of 6. She insulted them in the Mesa Clubhouse. They boot stomped her to the brink of death. They thought she was dead. They rolled her up in a piece of cut up carpeting, put her in the trunk of a car, drove her out to the desert east of Phoenix in Apache Junction, and stabbed her 27 times and cut her head off. So like trying to balance like interacting with these people, having them sleep at your house. You're asleep and they're asleep in the same house, socializing with them, like being socially interactive with them, and then knowing that they have that capability, that they have such low, for lack of better terms, respect or admiration for humanity, for another human being, that they could take a defenseless woman who had, the mother of 6, and take her in the desert and saw her head off with a buck knife. I don't even know what to say about that.
Yeah, that's dirty at the highest level. Psychologically, to know that somebody can get to that level. I know the mob family will always use the word capable, meaning he's capable. He's capable, meaning he can kill somebody. If you cross the line, he's willing to kill somebody. But there's a different level to capability. Based on this topic, going back to something you said, where you said, I was invincible. I got shot. I almost died, So for me, I felt untouchable. I brainwashed myself into thinking I'm, toughest guy in the streets. There's a book called David and Goliath, where the author talks about the fact that, not David versus Goliath, it's David and Goliath. The author talks about 3 different types of people who have close encounters with death, whether it was bombing or something. It was one person that missed it. It's one person that should have died but didn't die. The story was those who should have died but don't die can come out pushing the envelope so much more than they did before, because they have this feeling of, I'm untouchable. I'm immortal. You can't kill me. You know, you can't do nothing to me. Did you almost have that? Because some people come out after they get shot and have a close encounter, they become more pansies. They become scared. They're kind of like, oh my gosh, what if this happens? And then there's some that come, obviously you came out like this. So the story you're talking about is the fact that that event made you even tougher, thinking you were untouchable. Did you actually believe that?
You know what, along the lines of that book and that explanation, that analogy, to be quite honest with you, at that point in time in my life, I had written off my own death. I had accepted my own death. I didn't know how it was going to come or by whose hand or what the circumstance might be. But, and this is not flattering to say, I was so all in, I was so committed to what I was doing that I knew that something tragic was beyond the reality. It had become a probability.
Got it.
And so, but when you can accept that and balance that, I think it allowed me to operate even more aggressively, if that makes any sense.
Of course.
Because I had accepted my mortality, and I realized that there was a probability that something bad or tragic was going to happen during this window of time. And when you accept it, it's like, man, you know, like it actually, it's not a good place to be, because as an undercover operator, it makes you dangerous. And you become dangerous because you start ignoring signs. You start ignoring red flags. You start ignoring these things that you know and are trained to be triggers for you to heighten your sense of awareness and to pay closer attention. You start ignoring them and you start saying, man, but I'm Jaybird. And none of that applies to me.
That's crazy, the level of recklessness. But by the way, if you read strong generals of all time, these strong generals got to the point that you just said right now. They have to get to a point where they accepted death. Like that is a possibility. That is an option. I could go in there and die. And if you don't accept that, you're going to be a little bit timid as well. So the opposite of that in your world of timidity, you know, you're too timid and you can't really go to places that you need to push the envelope. By the way, you said I was fully all in and I was fully into my craft. Were you saying, were you all into ATF, all into J, or all into whatever camp you were a part of?
Probably all the above. I believed in the mission that I was serving. I believed in our battle against violent crime. I wholeheartedly. I believed in the objectives of our operation, of our mission, as to what we were trying to accomplish. But probably as more and more time passed, and as I got deeper and deeper into that role, it became more and more focused on me. And I think that regretfully, to be quite honest with you, I started making selfish decisions instead of practical, operational, mission-driven decisions. The mission was to uncover violent crime, find out who was committing it, who was ordering it, who was organizing it, who was benefiting from it. As I got deeper and deeper in that role, my selfishness started narrowing those decisions and that focus, and I started making decisions for me. I started making decisions like, how am I going to advance in this organization? How am I personally going to achieve? And like that element of that team player element started to fade away, and my selfishness started becoming more dominant. And that's just not good. It's not good.
You know, who was the chief disguise officer we sat down with in DC right outside the White House? John Mendes. Yeah, so we sat down with John Mendes. Her husband is the gentleman from Argo who played, I mean, you know the story. And so I asked her, I said, John, let me ask you this. What makes for a good CIA agent, right? Undercover. She gave me the craziest answer, Jay. Like literally, I remember till today. She said, someone like you, okay, someone who is charming, charismatic, can sell, can convince the other person that they're on their camp, but when he takes down Russia, he never brags about it. Do you remember that? And she says, most guys cannot do that because it's so hard. You just took down and the Kremlin. What do you mean you don't want to brag about it? You want to tell a couple of your friends at a bar and say, dude, if you win a Super Bowl, what do you say? We just beat the Patriots. We just beat whatever. He says, in this world, you can't brag about it to nobody.
My friends, my peers, the world of undercover operatives who've done like long-term deep cover infiltrations.
Yeah.
It's a fairly small fraternity, right? And something I've noticed about that's common amongst all these guys is that they're very humble, they're very gracious, they're very quick to brag on the success and the exploits and the achievements of their friends and their peers, but on any given operation, on any given day, they feel that they are the best and that no one else should take that case.
I've interviewed a lot of those guys, and I've been in some, for whatever random reasons, I've had a chance to spend a lot of time with them. And very common. They're very similar when you talk to them. And by the way, they play a very important role. It's not a job everybody wants to do. What you're doing, hats off to you, because not a lot of people wake up in the morning saying, I want to have Jay's life. Jay, similarities of what you saw with Rodney King back in the days. I had just come to the States. I came to the States from Iran. I was at a refugee camp in Germany. Came out here on November 28, 1990. And then Rodney King, I think, happened in 92. And I was in LA for, at the time. What similarities do you see with what happened with Rodney King versus George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and what we have going on today with protesting and riots?
Man, it's a great question. It's a question that a lot of people want to avoid. I think it's a question that a lot of white people want to avoid. People in law enforcement sometimes want to avoid it. What I think is the common denominator is that there has been such a breakdown in trust in law enforcement. There's no trust there. Like there's multiple reasons for why that has taken place over the course of time. But the public no longer trusts the police to protect them, whether that be real or whether that be false or imagined or fabricated. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. The trust is gone. So I truly think that I really think on the massive picture of this, that God is looking at us and weeping. I think God is crying right now. That we're all better than this. And you look at trust and you look at race relations and all these things, and if you go to the Declaration of Independence, which gives us the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all men being created equal, all men being created equal. I think God is looking at us, and He is weeping that we have failed to be able to live up to that.
It's a tough topic, but it kind of goes back to what you said earlier, which is the way you're able to do your work and keep anxiety down. Step number one was what? Purpose. Number two was communication. And then last one is build trust. And we're missing all those three. We're not talking about purpose. We're definitely not communicating, and there's no trust. So my opinion is all of this stuff got started. A lot of it got started and got reignited because Roger Goodell didn't have the audacity to meet with Kaepernick right after he kneeled the first time. I wonder what would have happened if Kaepernick would have just got a call from Goodell and said, hey, we want to fly you out to the headquarters and sit down and talk to plus NFLPA and let's address this. What can we do to support this? Imagine what would have happened if that issue was addressed immediately rather than waiting 3, 6, 12 months and it turned into what it is today. So,
well, let me give you just one perspective on that.
Please.
Just one man's perspective. I think that it is important for us, all of us, to be open and willing to change your mind. I think many of us do not want to change our mind. We do not want to change our viewpoint. And we hear compelling arguments on either side that should convince us to be open-minded. But like oftentimes our stubbornness doesn't want to let us change it. It is okay to change your mind. It is okay to say, the way I felt about something 5 years ago or 5 days ago is different than how I feel about it today. It's okay.
It's very hard to do. I know what you're saying. Believe me, I know what you're saying, but it's very, very hard to do, especially when you have all these people that have been ingrained in the way of thinking by their parents and media and teachers and professors and churches and organizations they're part of and communities they lived in. It's like betraying your heritage. It's a very tough thing to do. And I think one of the reasons why it's tough to do is because most people are not willing to reason. If you cannot reason, kiss it goodbye. There's not much we can do about it.
You hit it on the head. And I think we've become all or none. So if you are committed to the Black Lives Matter movement, or if you're committed to the Blue Lives Matter movement, right? And that is what you believe in, top to bottom. And I'm sympathetic to your cause, to your agenda. I want to support you. I want to be, and in many people's case, supportive of both those things. There's people in those camps that out of the 100 issues, I might agree with you on 99 of those issues. But if I don't agree with you on that 100th, if I don't agree with you on 100 out of 100, I become the enemy. Like I agree with 99 of the things you believe in. There's one that I'm stuck on. Hey, if you're not all in with me, if you don't agree with me across the board, line item, you're the enemy. And man, how do we ever improve, or how do we ever get better if that's where we're at?
It's a very, very good point. It's a very, very good point. But you know, the adversary and the media, if they talk about 99 things we agree in, who watches? They have to talk about the one thing we disagree in, because those get eyeballs. And if those get eyeballs, then all the other people are willing to pay the money to get the eyeballs, because when they're shown the Nielsen records of how many people watch our show, that's what they get, $1 million contract versus a $200,000 contract. So advertising dollars tend to speak. Let's talk lastly about the Hells Angels, which is what you were part of for a couple of years. What was it like? Just give us an idea of what it was like when you got in, and the experience of going through it.
I'll tell you what it wasn't like. It wasn't like the stereotype that that America holds of bikers. These guys were not like this pack of greasy, slimy, dirty, motorhead drug addicts. Were there people within that world that fit that stereotype? Of course there were. But they were smart. They were especially street smart. They conducted themselves socially a lot of times fairly, pleasantly. I didn't find that I was riding around with guys who were just like getting on a motorcycle to go out at night looking for someone to have their head caved in. They were focused. They were organized. Now, they weren't necessarily all of them book smart, like college-educated book smart, but they have their PhDs in the street. They have their PhDs in violence and intimidation. And the motivating factor in it was hate and was money.
Hate for what, though? What did they hate?
They hated their adversaries. They hated people that were trying to, that either insulted them, that were disrespectful of them, that wanted to infringe on their territory, which the infringement on territory then comes back to money, is because that's where money's made. That's where money's made in crime, in narcotics distribution, in prostitution, and all those things. The territory you control and you own expands or retracts your area of operations. So
what was your time when you were there? What years were you undercover?
2001 through 2003.
Oh, so you were at the Laughlin event. So were you at the Laughlin event?
I was
April 27th, 02?
Yes. I was at a party with the Hells Angels when the call came in, and they all left the party that I was at and went to the Harrah's Casino and got in the big brawl and the shootout that was all captured on the casino cameras. And
yeah, I mean, that looks brutal. What happened over there looks absolutely brutal. What took place? That's the big event they talk about.
I think it was a demonstration of the brazenness, and I think it was a demonstration of the commitment and the brotherhood and the loyalty that they could rally up together that quickly. They could move their location that quickly. And then when they arrived on scene, they did not care. Everybody knows a gambling casino has got 10,000 cameras around watching everything. They didn't care. And I thought a very interesting element is that when the battle settled, there were Mongol vests strewn around where they had stripped off their colors trying to escape, stuffed in air vents, stuffed in garbage cans. Some were seen floating down the river. It was the casino was on the Colorado River. Not one Hells Angel vest was recovered. Those guys did not, would not take off their colors. They were so committed to that patch, to that death head, to that name. They were gonna win that fight or die trying, but they were not gonna take those cuts off.
So you're saying the Hells Angels were more proud and brutal than Mongols were. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I'd use those terms, but I'll say this. The prospecting process, the phases for a Hells Angel are extensive and they're long. Like a minimum mandatory 365 days prospecting as a Hells Angel before you can even be considered to get your cut.
Yeah, I saw that.
Other gangs, like give them out very quickly. Give them like there was times.
Got it.
Where the Mongols were actually approaching street gang members saying, "Hey, here's a Mongol's vest. Learn how to ride a motorcycle." Right?
Sureños. Are you talking about the Sureños when they showed up and they brought a bunch of Sureños in?
Sure. So whoever that organization is, if you have to work for something, if you have to suffer for something, if you have to sacrifice for something, it's more important to you. That is why organizations, not just in biker land, sports teams, all those things, you suffer and sacrifice and spend time so that when you get it, it has meaning. And those angels, they know that what they went through to get that cut, and they were not going to give it up. Whereas if someone from another biker gang, if it just got handed to you, what meaning does that truly have? What value does that truly have?
That makes sense. So standards and expectations were higher. Maybe that's a way of putting it, to get in and become a made man essentially for Hells Angels was higher than it was to become a Mongol.
Well, then when you're a member of the Hells Angels, you are at the top of the biker mountain. You are the king of the mountain. Any housewife, any mechanic, any school teacher, police officer, if you say biker, automatically what comes into their mind is the Hells Angels. Yeah. And when you were at the top of the mountain, everybody underneath you wants to knock you out. Everybody wants that position. And so their adversaries are everybody. Everybody wants to be them. And so what does that do? That creates paranoia in them. Everybody's after us. Everybody hates us. Everybody wants to be us. And that's a bad formula, man. That's bad chemistry.
Bad chemistry, why? Because you think internally people are dividing you and maybe somebody on the inside is going to go and tip off what we're doing, strategies. Is that what it is?
You're paranoid. You're worried about maintaining your status. You know that everybody wants to be the king of the mountain. You know what? If you're the heavyweight champion of the world, you don't get to just say, I'm the new heavyweight champion of the world. You got to knock that cat out to take the belt. And they know that everybody wants to come and knock them out.
That's right. That is right. So just to put some optics out there, some numbers out there, Hell's Angels, 2,500 members, Mongols, 500. Hell's Angels had 230 different chapters. Mongols had like 12 different chapters. Hell's Angels, the founder was Sonny. Is it Sonny Berger? Sonny
Barger.
Sonny Barger's the founder. And then you have on the other side with Mongols was what's his name? Roger Penny. Am I saying it right?
He was a member. He was a shot caller there. Yes.
He was a shot caller at the time. So when these guys were facing off each other, and you are kind of going in with your partner Pops, and he's also an ATF. By the way, he does not look like an ATF agent. Like, he is a qualified. I couldn't even tell. Like this, he looked like a guy that was partying all the time, using drugs and women. He's either an incredible actor or he got really deep into it.
Well, let me qualify that just a little bit. Pops was a confidential informant.
He was not ATF.
So he was in essence working with us, for us, but he was not a badge carrying agent. He was a confidential informant.
So how long had he been himself with Hell's Angels?
Well, he'd been with them the same time I was with them. I brought him with me, but like you hit it on the head, there's no faking Pop's life's experiences that brought him to that point in time. You cannot train through that. You can't fake that. You had to have lived that life to look and act like that cat did.
Did you trust him?
I did. I trusted Pops. I had built, loyalty with him well before we worked the Hell's Angels case.
Got it.
I worked on many operations with him, and I did trust him. And
because I wonder sometimes, I'm like, could you even trust him? You know, like if he's your partner, can you fully trust him? Because maybe he can be bought with, money, women, drugs. I mean, what's his motive?
He made some mistakes along the way. He got a little bit loose at times. He needed to be tightened up, and jerk his leash, keep him online. Yeah. But did I trust him? To answer that question as simply as it was asked, did I trust him? Yes, I did.
That's good. That's interesting. Yeah, that dynamic is, you always wonder, especially now that you're telling me he was an ATF. He was just somebody as an informant that was helping out. How far did you have to go to show loyalty? How far did you have to go to show loyalty? Meaning, hey, did you drugs, women, crime, killing, shooting? How far did you go where they said, damn, this guy is actually legit?
Well, I can answer that with one story. When I first came into the Hell's Angels, I approached the leadership and said, what are the rules? What do you expect of me? I want to be a good Hell's Angel. I'm in training. And the leader of my charter said, it's your job to kill Mongols. That's what we do. So for, in essence, 2 years, I took that information and put it in my back pocket, right? And held on to that mindset, that mantra. As the case was beginning to end, I told the Hell's Angels, there's a Mongol in Mexico, and he's threatening us and threatening to import narcotics into our area, and I need to go down there and kill him. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go kill him on behalf of the gang. The people I spoke to were 100% behind it. Gave me the gun to do it, told me how to do it, all these things, right? So go to Mexico, kill this Mongol, bury him in a shallow grave, take some pictures of them all bloodied up and shot up and beaten, bring them back to the Hell's Angels, tell the Hell's Angels the story of how we had killed the Mongol in Mexico and gave them hard, cold evidence of the murder. That is ultimately what got us over the top, where they gave us vests and made us members. What they didn't know, and what we didn't tell them, is that entire scheme was a fabrication. I had told the angels about this Mongol in Mexico, and then with the use of our team and a homicide detective, we went out in the desert outside of Phoenix and completely fabricated a murder scene. And then took the evidence that we had created from our homemade murder, put it in a FedEx box, had it shipped to my undercover house from Mexico so that it would look right, be credible, all those things, presented the information to the Hells Angels. And, you know, one of the elements that's key to undercover work is inaccurate conclusions from accurate observations. Inaccurate conclusions from accurate observations. They accurately heard my story. They accurately saw the bloody Mongol vest. They saw the pictures of the Mongol in the shallow grave in the desert with his hands and his feet duct taped and his brains spilled out in the dirt. They accurately saw that. They inaccurately concluded that I was telling them the truth and had committed a murder. And so when you say how far, when your question, how far did we have to go to gain acceptance? We went to the acceptance where we built a homicide and then sold the fact that we were murderers to murderers in order to get inside the gang.
Is it true that you used the cow's stomach to make it seem like the brain was shot up?
There were cow parts. We went to a butcher. Our homicide detective went to a butcher. We had cow blood. We had cow parts. Like I said earlier, like I'm not a big fan of dead bodies, but when I looked at this crime scene, I was like, oh my God, that dude's dead. Like there was no doubt in my mind, this dude's dead.
You know, when I talk to Phil Leonetti, or I talk to Sammy, or I talk to Michael or Frank Collado, or any of these guys that were in the mob world, I ask him, how much was because, you know, in the mob side, it's more about the lifestyle. You know, you have money, you're rich, you're partying, codes, you know, all this stuff. And then there's the code you live by. But there's women, there's partying, there's that other attractive part to it as well, New York. Was there hardcore partying going on as well? Or you were saying, no, girls with 3 missing tooth and all that stuff? Or were you guys partying with women nonstop?
There was both. There were guys that, like, you know, were professionals and partied like no one else, right? There was also guys that I ran around with who went to the gym 3 times a day and didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't use drugs, meal prepped, set their alarms for 3 o'clock in the morning so they could get up and eat a chicken breast because they needed an infusion of protein. And there was everything in between, which was good. It made it interesting, and it also made it, you didn't have to fit into one box to be accepted because there were so many different types of people.
Got it. So you don't have a crazy party story with them?
Oh man, there's parties, you know, like cocaine bashes and nitrous oxide parties and girls running around and music blaring and booze flowing and fights and people fucking in the corner and all that kind of stuff.
That was normal. That was a normal life for that.
You know what? I don't know that I would say it was normal, but it wasn't abnormal.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for somebody that's watching this, you keep hearing about MS-13. Some people that know biker, they know Hells Angels, they know Mongols, Bandidos. Obviously, we know some of the names, right? You hear about all these other gangs that are out there. Which one? How vicious were they comparable to an MS-13?
I think that the Hells Angels, if you do not cross them, if you do not cross their business, if you do not cross their territory, you may very well never notice that they're there. Whereas, you know, the MS-13, which, like, to use your example, and you probably of all people can relate to this best. When you grow up in a culture and in a society where human beings and humanity is viewed differently than it is in America, the things that take place that are shocking to us as Americans for some people are everyday common events. So if you grew up in San Salvador and you see people being beheaded or being hacked up with machetes, or being tortured publicly and bodies scattered in the street, and that is what you grew up with. That is what you grew up with. And that's not abnormal to you. Then you come here and you act like that, and we are appalled and shocked, and you're just acting what's like what you know.
That makes a lot of sense because, sometimes even when I tell some stories from Iran, people are like, yeah, whatever, he's probably making it up. I'm like, no. And then you go talk to 6 other Iranians, are like, yeah, this is what happened. Like, no way. Yeah, that was a life in Iran. That's kind of how it was in Iran. No way in the world. Yeah, well, I guess I have to believe it now because I'm hearing it from 6 different people that are not connected to each other.
Probably what you saw as a child, what some of these people see in some of these countries as children, is so far outside our North American realm of possibility that what to us is appalling, to other people, to actually children in the world, is commonplace.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. When I bought my first truck from MS-13 Leader in LA. And the story is a funny story because my dad's like, I found this artist that I'm going to show you. He wants to sell you the truck. And I said, great. I'd love to be able to tell my friends in school I bought a car from an artist. So I go to Upland, which is where the mechanic shop was. And I go to Upland and says, yeah, it's that guy. Let me introduce you. A really nice guy. He's good to me. And I go there, everything, MS-13, everything. And he's got this nice Chevy S10 long bed, dropped, 144 spokes, low profile, 14-inch wheels, system, subwoof, the whole 9. And he says, here's my friend, he's an artist. And I'm like, and he's part of a very special community. This community is called MS-13. I'm like, Dad, MS-13 is one of the most vicious gangs out there. No, he's very nice to me. Anyways, I end up buying the car. First weekend, I'm in Hollywood partying. I'm 16 years old, about to be 16 years old. At that time, I got my license a little bit earlier. I'm at Hollywood partying, and cops, helicopter above us. It's me and 3 of my friends. We're in the truck. Cops from behind me, cops in front of me. Helicopter comes, they drop. Get out of the car. Get out. We all get out the car. They thought I was him, and I had bought the car from him. And so because it hadn't yet been registered under my name, because it was just a week, we got arrested that night. And then once they found out I'm not a gangster, they let us go. And they said, oh, wrong person we got. But that was my experience with MS-13. It's a very interesting gang in LA. And rumor has it can go places that others are not willing to go through. I mean, not just rumor. You hear about the stories that you read about. How bad of a time is it right now, Jay, to be a gangster? How bad of a time is it right now to be a criminal? Today's marketplace, somebody is looking at this saying, you know what, I'm considering being a criminal one day. How bad of a time is it today to be a criminal in a street gang?
As we speak today, at this very moment, what is it, June 24th, 25th? Probably really good because the cops are so distracted. The cops are, for lack of better terms, handcuffed. Police departments are being defunded. If I was a narcotics trafficker, I would be pushing as much dope as I can push right now because I'd be like, hey, man, the enemy, law enforcement, is distracted right now. Their resources are divided. Their resources are being diminished. Now is my window.
I was totally expecting you to say the complete opposite answer. And the way you broke it down makes so much sense. Makes so much sense. The reason why I thought you were going to go to the area of it's a terrible time to be a criminal right now because there's phones everywhere, social media, cameras. You got 330 million cameras pretty much that everybody can catch you doing a wrong thing. But no, you're saying the people who are criminals' number one enemy, which is law enforcement, they're crippled right now. This is a great time to be a criminal.
I think some of these social experiments that are taking place in some of these communities without cops, and where cops are not welcome or not wanted or being defunded, I fear that those communities are going to find out the hard way how important law enforcement is, but more importantly, how important good law enforcement is. not just law enforcement, like the cops, the people in the cop game, we have to up our game. We have to be better. We have to improve, like in all areas.
Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic with what's going to happen here soon? Are you a little bit paranoid and concerned?
I'm optimistic in the long haul. That I think what's taking place right now is important, and I think that this is going to be, in hindsight, a great time in our country, because I think so much awareness is being brought. Like, even if we don't agree with how that awareness is coming about, if we don't agree with some of the tactics, the awareness is nonetheless being brought. It's being forced into our face. I think we have to improve, and we have to get better to move forward as a society and culture. I think down the road, on the long term, we will be better. I think on the short term, I think things will get worse before they get better on the short term.
When you say worse, what do you mean? Worse than riots and protesting?
I just think that I think that the militancy in all these groups is not going to be satisfied until they get every single thing that they demand. And we're still a ways away on a lot of those issues, a long ways away on some of those issues, a very long ways away on some of those issues. And the various factions and people with every agenda you can imagine out there are empowered to fight right now. And maybe they should be. Maybe what we're going through is necessary to create the change we need to become who we should be.
Am I misreading you if I feel like you're walking on eggshells right now, wanting to say what you're really thinking about, or no?
I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells, but I do think that right now, like, words have never been more important. Words have never been more important, because what we say and how we say it is scrutinized, and it's critiqued, and it's manipulated and twisted at times. And so when I'm calculated and when I'm trying to answer, I just realize how important words are, and important to who's hearing them.
Yeah, what makes me, because I'm constantly talking about different, in our company, we're 50-50, 50 left, 50 right, and, whatever. Let's just say we're 45, we got 10% independent or people that could care less. I had a call this morning with one of our guys at 7:30. I said, politically, which way do you lean? He says, honestly, I have no idea what I am. I said, it's actually not a bad place to be if you don't know who you are. You're probably enjoying life more than some people who have taken a position. But I've never seen more powerful people be careful with the words they're choosing today. I've never, ever seen more powerful, influential people who are worried about what they're going to say next because of the consequences they may face from a community that may come back saying that was offensive, that could hurt them in their lives, business, financially, in any possible way. And I'm seeing that across the board.
I think someone like yourself, who's hosting this show, I think someone like myself, who's a guest, we want to say how we feel, and we want to be articulate and accurate about it, but we also want to be sensitive to other people's views. Not everybody thinks or feels the same way I do. I want to be respectful of them. And I have to be careful about what I say and how I say it. I own what I say, and it's not like I'm incapable of making a mistake or misspeaking on something. But you look at all these factions out there. Do Black Lives Matter? Yes, I believe they do. And I support what they are trying to accomplish. Do Blue Lives Matter? Yes, I do. I support rebuilding the trust and rebuilding the training and making that more professional. But there's some people that don't want that won't allow you to support both sides. You have to pick one or the other.
I just keep hearing them, and I just keep hearing them. And I wonder what is needed, because one way of pushing the agenda is when the opposition just decides to stay quiet, not say anything because they don't want to piss the wrong person off. And that's exactly where they want you to be at. For you to be frightened of saying what you really need to say, for other people to say, shit, I agree with them. You know, but again, weird times we're living in. We're going to do our part, and we're going to bring guests on to talk on topics that are going to be getting people to think. And you definitely made me think today from sitting down with you. Jay, I salute you for the life you lived and the service you brought. God knows how many thousands of lives you've saved that we can't count on. You know, one day when you go upstairs, I'm sure you're going to have to talk to him about some of the parties you did or some of the people you hung out with and things you did. But I'm sure he's also going to tell you, listen, you saved thousands of lives on what you did with your job. I salute you from me to you. Thank you for your service. And folks, if you're watching this, we're going to put a link to his book below, No Angel. If you haven't purchased it, I highly recommend you get a New York Times bestseller. We'll put the link below. And Jay, once again, thank you so much for coming out and being a guest on Valuetainment. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
It was a lot of fun. So we've done a lot of mob interviews. We've never done anything that has to do with Hell's Angels. And this was a complete different angle, talking to Jay Dobbins, who's the right guy to talk about this topic. So I have two other interviews I want you to watch. One of them is with the chief disguise officer, Jonah Mendes, which is who I talked about in the interview. She's the one that put a whole mask on and went by President Bush Sr., and President Bush couldn't recognize her because they were deciding to take CIA to a whole different place. It's a brilliant interview if you're not watched. And the other one is with an FBI agent that I interviewed, Michael McGowan, who did some things having to do with El Chapo. Very, very different story, and it's possibly being picked up by Sly. If you haven't heard his story, click on that to watch it. And if you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.